Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is the final daf of Maseches Sanhedrin. We are at the two dots right in the middle of Kuf Yud Bet Amud Bet. We're going to have, we're going to have some Rabbi Akiva, and we're going to learn a little Rashi. There is no Tosfos. We're done with Tosfos. And so we are going to, in fact, one of the most interesting looking dapim is Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, Amudim, I guess I should say. And so let's get started. We're at Rabbi Shimon Omer. So let me share my screen because today is Wednesday. So when I'm on, I'm trying to prepare. But those, I just can't do it 7 days a week. Although I may try to do it. No, nobody else like that. Okay, Rabbi Shimon Omer. So behemta. Now, although it says behemtecha in the Gemara, if you take a look at the Zion, it changes it to behemta because that's the word in the pasuk. Below behem is bechol bechor basa. So one second, let's maybe back up a little bit more and say, what did we learned yesterday? A brisa that regarding the destruction of objects in an ir hanidachat. Again, reminder, we are in the last parak. Of course, we're on the last daf now of Sanhedrin. The last parak has dealt with people who don't go to heaven, basically, who don't get the olam haba. And the question is, and one of those, the final group that we mentioned, are the people who live in one of these destroyed cities, in one of these cities that engage in idolatry, where a majority of the city engaged in idolatry. And that pivoted us to discuss what are the limitations and rules associated with determining whether a particular city is an ir hanidachat. And then one of the aspects of ir hanidachat is that everything, all the possessions in the city get destroyed. Yeah. And so the Tanakama said that when it comes to consecrated items for the altar, they need to die, meaning we need to set them aside in a special room and feed them special feed, basically so that they're killed not as part of the killing of everything and the burning of everything of an ir hanidachat, but separately, because they shouldn't be treated with all of the regular objects of the ir hanidachat. Similarly, items now, and then when it comes to items consecrated for the temple maintenance, they should be redeemed, meaning that they belong to the temple. You're not allowed to burn them at all. They go to the temple. Truma should be allowed to rot. And again, the assumption is that truma, again, has a sense of holiness, and yet it's considered a person's possessions. And so as a result, it does require destruction. It's just not going to be destroyed with everything else. And Meiser Sheni and Holy Scriptures are hidden. Again, they both belong to the person, according to the Tanakama, who is holding them, who is living in this city where all the possessions are being destroyed. But out of respect for those items, we're not going to just allow them to be destroyed with everything else. We're going to make them destroyed separately by putting them aside. So Rabbi Shimon, however, disagrees, but it's not clear what his disagreement is. So because the Torah references its animals, he says that firstborn and meiser animals are not killed. And so as a result, even though you might consider these animals, a firstborn animal and a meiser animal, both so the firstborn animal goes to the Kohen, and the meiser animal, and maybe it's even being held by the Kohen, and is sacrificed, and then the Kohen gets to eat it. And the meiser animal you bring up and you essentially treat almost like meiser sheni, where you bring it to the Yerushalayim and you eat it there. And so as a result, those animals have some kind of special holiness. And so as a result, they're not even killed at all, and they are still permitted potentially. And money set aside for the temple or for Meiser Sheni are also not destroyed. Now that seems to be again consistent with the Tanakama, because again, money set aside for the temple is going to actually be redeemed. So that is what Rabbi Shimon says. And yesterday we explained the Tanakama, and now as we pick up at the two dots, about halfway down on Kuf Yud Bet Amud Bet, we're going to explain Rabbi Shimon. So the Gemara is going to wonder what firstborn and meiser animals Rabbi Shimon is talking about. Meaning, how does he disagree with respect to those animals from what the Tanakama said? Okay, because presumably the Tanna Kama would say that those items, if they are, well, let's take a look and we'll see. So, okay. So, Rabbi Shimon, Omer behemta v'lo behemis bechor umaser. That doesn't include firstborn and miser animals. So, b'mayaskina, what are we talking about? Elam b'tamimin, if we say that they're unblemished, shalal shamayim, who, well, these have to be brought, they really belong to Hashem, and so as a result, we shouldn't need any kind of special word of behemta to exclude them. They should be excluded because it says shlala. Ela b'vale mumin. So it must be that there's some kind of blemish in these animals, and therefore they ordinarily should be considered the possessions of the owner, and shlala ninhu. And so, but then they would be the possessions of the owner. And so why would you exclude them? So Ravina la'olam b'vale mumin. Really, we're talking about blemished animals. Umi shenech al b'toras behemta. But because the only reason you can eat them is based on the idea that it's because of its animals, namely yatsu, that's when we say that you're supposed to destroy the animals that are in an ir hanidachat. That's where your right to eat them is because it belongs to you. Yatsu elu, but that comes to exclude these kinds of animals, namely the firstborn and miser animals. You don't eat them because they're your animals. Because they of the rules associated with the bechor and maaser, you're allowed to eat them. Dishlal shemayim ninhu, because those are really on some level the booty of Hashem. They're belong to Hashem, and so as a result, that's how we're going to understand that this. And so Rabbi Shimon would say that because we eat them for a special reason, it's not as if it's your animal. And so as a result, we're not going to destroy it. It's going to survive, and some other person would be allowed to eat it, presumably. And this idea would argue with the Tanna Kama. The Tanna Kama would say, on the other hand, no, you cannot eat it. It belongs to the owner, and as a result, it gets destroyed with the rest of the city. Ufligin Shmuel, and this view of Ravina argues with Shmuel, because the Amr Shmuel said, Hakol karev, hakol nifteh, everything is offered, everything is redeemed, my kamer. Now that statement obviously can't be true, because it's not true that everything is offered and everything is redeemed. So haki kamer, this is what he means to say. Kol shekarev kishehu tam, v'nifta kishehu balmum. If you have something that is brought as a sacrifice when it's unblemished, and it's redeemed when it is blemished, mishalal ima'et, then it gets excluded based on the word shalal. V'chol shekarev kishehu tam, ve'eno nivdeh kishehu balmum, and anything that is offered when it's unblemished, but is not redeemed when it's blemished, kigon b'chor u'maser, mibehema nafka, that is, the exclusion of it is derived from the word animal. And so that is how Shmuel would understand. And so we end up with this distinction, with the box on the screen. So according to Ravina, everybody agrees that when it comes to unblemished sacrifices, that they're left to die because they're not considered booty. But when it comes to blemished items, especially specifically blemished firstborn and miser animals, the Tanna Kama says they're destroyed with the city because they're booty, and the Rebbe Shimon says no, because they're not killed at all, because they're part of the category, because they're not really it's animals, but it's not the animals of the city. And so as a result, Rabbi Shimon would say that they survive. Whereas Shmuel says the following. Shmuel says that when it comes to blemish sacrifices, everybody agrees that they're going to be destroyed because it's part of the city. They're going to be the booty. And so as a result, they would get, everybody agrees that they're destroyed. And the disagreement between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Shimon is about an unblemished animal. And when it comes to an unblemished animal, if it's a firstborn / miser, and kachim kalim animals, they'll be destroyed because they're the possessions of the owner. And when it comes to Rabbi Shimon, so then the unblemished and firstborn and Meiser kachim animals are not killed because of the word it's animals with respect to the with respect to firstborn and Meiser, and because of its booty with respect to kachim kalim. And so
I've got a couple issues with this.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, with your box there, firstborn and Meiser animals are clearly kachim kalim. That's in the Mishnah that we're supposed to read every morning, but most of us don't.
Yes, well, that's true. I really, when I say kachim kalim, I'm really mostly referring to shlamim and other offerings that are, and you're right that firstborn and Meiser animals would be included in kachim kalim, but they are distinct from kachim kalim because when it comes to kachim kalim, if they become blemished, there's a redemption process for other kachim kalim, which doesn't exist for the firstborn and Meiser. So that's why we need to look at them separately.
And that gets me to the second issue, which is if you the case of an animal that when it becomes identified as part of the animal Meiser, or a firstborn at birth that doesn't have a moment the time that it can be like at 8 days or whatever it is when it can first be sacrificed. And then before you get a chance to take it to the temple, it develops a mum. So it was essentially Hashem's animal. And now they're saying, at least they're now basically both Shmuel and Ravina are saying that it's not Hashem's animal, but it never got redeemed. It never got converted into not Hashem's animal anymore.
So when we're talking about, you're right. And that's the unique aspect of a Bechor and Meiser animals, is that unlike the other kinds of animals, they don't have that redemption. Their status as holy animals is effectively dependent on their remaining unblemished. But if they become blemished, they effectively automatically revert to being the owner's animal. And so that's the unique aspect of, you're exactly right, that's the unique aspect. I don't believe that there is any redemption required for either of them.
I don't recall there being any. We'll get,
yeah.
in about a year, we'll get to that Masechta.
Yes, God willing, God willing. So I think that, I mean, I'm pretty sure that this chart is right. It is, I did it on my own, and then I turned the page and found that they actually had a chart in the Art Scroll Gemara.
Yeah, I think it's consistent with the Gemara. It's just it doesn't make any sense that you can have an animal suddenly no longer be Hashem's without some sort of redemption process.
So again, I think that these are unique rules specifically just in these cases because and one can understand why these two cases would be unique, because there isn't when you go through and you count your animals and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then your 10th animal is your Meiser animal of the new crop of new births this year.
Wow.
It's an automatic process. You don't have to make it holy. It is holy as soon as you count it as number 10 and you flag it as the 10th animal. Similarly, with the Bechor animal, as soon as it's born, it's holy. So there was no action, not the same kind of action that you have with respect to other holy animals where a person was involved. And so as a result, that can be a reason why here you don't need further intervention for Hashem to return it, because on some level it was a natural cause that had it become holy in the first place. So that's my my thinking about that. But let's try and get we got a lot to do, so let's keep on going. And Trumos Yirkavu. So we say that the Trumos need to be put aside. They're not burned, but essentially they don't belong to the person any longer. I mean, they belong to the person, and so as a result, we're going to say that they don't they get destroyed. They just don't get destroyed with everything else. So Amar Rav Chisda lo shanu ela trumas biyad Yisrael. We're talking about when the Jew is holding on to it. Aval betruma biyad Kohen, but once the Kohen holds it, well, kaven to Mamonahe, who once it's truly the Kohen's property, so Tisaref, then it gets burned. It's nothing special. Masiv Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asked the following: Meiser Sheni b'kisvei hakodesh yaganzu. Then when it comes to Meiser Sheni and Holy Scriptures, so then those all get hidden away. Again, they belong to the person, but they need to be destroyed, and we're not going to destroy them with everything else because that would be a terrible mistreatment of these items. And so as a result, they're going to we are going to just hide them away. But yet, Meiser Sheni in the hands of a Yisrael is just like a truma in the hands of a Kohen. So v'katani yiganzu, and yet we say that you need to hide it away. So why is it that Rav Chisda would say that when it's in the hands of a Kohen, you would actually go and burn it? So Ela eat atmar hachi inmer. No, here's what Rav Chisda really said. Rav Chisda lo shanu ela trumas biyad Kohen. No, it's when it's in the Kohen's hand that it gets hidden away. Aval truma biyad Yisrael to nasin lekohen be'ir acheres. But when it's in the Yisrael's hand, well, then it doesn't belong to him, and it doesn't belong to any Kohen yet. And so, as a result, we have the ability to give it to a Kohen who lives in another city, and that Kohen would be able to eat it and keep it because it doesn't belong to the people in the city. And although we burn the property of the righteous who live in the city, the property of people who don't live in the city, that just happens to be in the city, we will not destroy. So that's the explanation. Okay, so Tanan Hassam.
So that actually creates another problem, because it's pretty clear from the Yerushalmi and Trumot that there is at least an aspect of ownership caused by the right of decision to which Kohen you give it to.
100%. And we've seen that actually as we've gone through Bavli as well, that the right to choose the Kohen is itself a property right. But that is different from saying that the Truma itself is the property of the Yisrael. So there can be in American law, we view there as being many indicia of ownership, each of which has the ability to be transacted separately. And one of those abilities is the ability to gift something. And so as a result, the ability to gift is the thing that is owned by the Yisrael, but the underlying item is not. Now, that ability to gift is an aspect of the underlying item, but it isn't full ownership of the underlying item. And as a result, we're going to say that it's not, we're not going to, it on some level needs to be given to a Kohen from another city. But you're right that it's an aspect of possession that every Yisrael has the right to choose which Kohen receives his truma. Okay.
This would seem to apply to the point we discussed earlier with the Bechor and the Meiser and the Meiser Rishon, that suppose because they cannot be eaten by everybody, they can only be eaten by Kohen, right? So then you could say, when we say that they can be eaten, it's only a Kohen. So therefore, it would seem that in the earlier case, when Shimon was talking about Amum Bali Mum and Bali Not, then they could be given to a Kohen in another city when we say it's a Kodesh LaHashem. So it doesn't have to be given to a Kohen there. Then it could be preserved. They could be saved.
Right. Well, so two things. So one is that when the Meiser that we're talking about is Meiser Behema, not Meiser Rishon. So I just want to clarify that.
Meiser Behema, okay, right. Meiser Behema.
And Meiser Behema, you do get to eat yourself. It doesn't go to the Kohen. I mean, in part goes to the Kohen, but it doesn't go. You get the primary eating is yours. The Bechor animal, you're right. And it's a good question. I did not see anything that raised that particular distinction as to why maybe we should say that because the Bechor is going to go to a Kohen, that there's going to be an aspect of it. But the bottom line is that it's an animal that, in the end, we're saying that we're, again, depending on whether you're Shmuel or Ravina, but if we're talking about Ravina, we're dealing with blemished items. And so as a result, and in all cases, these two animals, the Meiser and the Bechor, are effectively considered part of the, if it's unblemished, according to Ravina, it's considered part of the city. And that's what you're highlighting is part of the disagreement that we saw between Ravina and Shmuel as to how we treat blemished versus unblemished animals that are either a Bechor or Meiser.
But if they're mumim, mumim, then we were saying that they're not eaten as animals. They're eaten that they belong to Hashem essentially, which is, and they can be eaten by the Kohanim. And if there are no Kohanim in the city, then
no, they can, let me clarify. If they're blemished, they can be eaten by the original owner. If they're blemished, they can be eaten by the original owner. And so that's why, according to one opinion, they can just get burned because they belong back to the original owner. That's exactly the point. Whereas if, on the other hand, if they, and so that's exactly the point, that if in fact they're blemished, they can be eaten by the original owner. And Shmuel says, even though they can be eaten by the original owner, the fact that you can eat them still relates to their nature as a Bechor and a Meiser animal. And so as a result, therefore, Rabbi Shimon says that in fact you need to, you don't kill them because of that, and so as a result, they're not killed based on the fact that it says it's animals. So,
right, they're not, but but aren't they given to the Kohanim?
No, they would go to anybody outside the city. It's not necessarily to the Kohanim. It doesn't have to. If they're blemished, they don't necessarily go to the Kohanim. They are effectively controlled by the original owner who is dying.
The Bechor goes to the Kohen, doesn't it? The Bechor,
only if it doesn't have a mum. If it has a mum, then it isn't going to get offered as a sacrifice and isn't going to necessarily go to the Kohen. Oh no, 1 second. Maybe you're right.
Ravina was saying that if it's a mum, it goes to the Kohen. I mean, what do you call it? They're not. Don't they go to the Kohen? Don't the firstborn go to the Kohen? We were just saying it's about the Shalal Shemayim Uninhu.
Yeah, I mean, it does need to go to the Kohen, and then the Kohen gets to eat it. So it must be that it's already in the hands of the Kohen that we're talking about. So the Kohen is, if the Kohen is the question is does the Kohen get to keep the animal or not? And so if in fact the Kohen is, if the animal is blemished, so then again, according to Ravina's understanding, Rabbi Shimon would allow him to keep the animal.
Right.
And the Tanna Kama would say, no, it's destroyed because it belongs to the Kohen. And so as a result, it's considered the booty of the city.
Wait a minute, if it belongs to the Kohen, it's not the city, it's the Kohen.
No, the Kohen's living in the city, in the Irani Dachat. The Kohen lives in the Irani Dachat. We're dealing with everybody living in the Irani Dachat.
Well, but they're not, what do you call it? They're not eating as animals. It's Shemayim Ninu, according to Ravina.
No, only if it's unblemished. If it's blemished, then it's not, according to the Tanna Kama. You're thinking of Ravina explaining Rabbi Shimon, but you have that's the debate between Tanna Kama and Rabbi Shimon. Okay. We gotta go.
Okay, but in that case, it's the Shemayim Ninu and belongs to but they're not burned because they're what do you call it? They're not burned because they're not eaten as animals. They're eaten as the firstborn.
We've got to go. It's going to be another hour before we're going to be done.
Yeah, the problem is Ken, is that you're not the chart is on the screen. If you take a look at it, you can copy it, and I'm going to leave it on the screen for a little bit longer. But you're getting yourself confused between the Rabbi Shimon and the Tanna Kama. So let's keep going, because otherwise, again, we got to be able to finish. So Tanan Hassam. So now we're going to cite Brisa. So Isa shall Meiser Sheni Tura Minachala. That when it comes to Meiser Sheni, it is exempt from challah. Divrei Rebbe Meir v'chachamim mechayvim. Rebbe Meir, that's the opinion of Rebbe Meir, and the chachamim say, no, you are chayiv in challah. So now we're going to, so Rav Chisda is going to make a statement about this, and then we're going to ask on Rav Chisda from our Mishnah. So Rav Chisda machlokas b'Meiser Sheni b'Yerushalayim. The debate is about Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. Did Rabbi Meir savar Meiser Sheni b'Mamon Gavoahu, the Rabbanan savrei Mamon Hediotu, because the Rabbi Meir says that it belongs to Hashem, where the rabbis say no, it belongs to the person. So as a result, because it belongs to the person, you're going to be chayiv in challah, and because it belongs to Hashem, Rabbi Meir says that you're not. Aval b'gvulin, but when you're outside of Yerushalayim, divrei hakol pater. Everybody agrees that it belongs to Hashem, and so as a result, it won't be subject to challah. So Masav Rav Yosef, Meiser Sheni v'Kisvei HaKodesh Yiganzu. And second, our Mishnah says that it all gets hidden away, which suggests that it's considered the property of the owner. So b'may askinan. So what are we talking about? Elim in Yerushalayim. If you're going to tell me it's Yerushalayim, mi havya ir hanidachat. Could there be an ir hanidachat in Yerushalayim? Of course not. Batanya asara dvarim nemru b'Yerushalayim v'zu achat mehen. One of them is one of the items that they said. One of the 10 items that they say about Yerushalayim is enanasas ir hanidachas. It can't become an ir hanidachas. Ve'ela be'ir acheres. So it must be talking about when the Meiser Sheni is from another city. V'askua legava, and you brought it to Yerushalayim. But haklatos mechitzos. But then it belonged. The Yerushalayim's walls have already taken ownership of it, and so as a result, you're not allowed to pull that Meiser Sheni food out of Yerushalayim, and so as a result, the food would be allowed to be eaten. It would not be destroyed with the rest of the ir hanidachas. So el b'gvulin. So as a result, the Meiser Sheni that we say must be hidden away can't be in Yerushalayim. It has to be in a city outside of Yerushalayim. So, but then v'katani yiganzu, and now you're telling me that it's hidden, which suggests that it belongs to the owner, and yet Rav Chisda said that it doesn't belong to the owner when it's outside of Yerushalayim. It belongs to Hashem. So la'olam di'irach eres asku legava. Really, it was from another city and brought to Yerushalayim. B'hakaba mayaskinam shenitma. It's where it became tamei, and so as a result, because it became tamei, it needs to be hidden away. But lo firke. But then, if you brought Meiser Sheni to Yerushalayim and the food became tamei, why not redeem it? And then you can convert it into money and then buy other Meiser Sheni food with it. And so then it won't be Meiser Sheni any longer, and you could do it. And so as a result, you would be allowed to use it however you want. And so therefore, you should have to take challah for it. So, to Amar Rabbi Elazar says, "Minayin l'maiser sheni shenitma shepodin oso afil b'Yerushalayim." How do I know that you can redeem maiser sheni even in Yerushalayim if it became tamei? Talmud lomar lo tuchal se'eso, that you can that you're not able to, and se'eso, and to it literally means to carry it. But here we're going to break this phrase into two pieces. Lo suchal, you can't bring it, and se'eso, and you can't eat it. Be'ein se'es ela achila. And se'es refers to achila because by Shneimar, by Yisam Masaos me'es panav, that Yosef, when giving food to his brothers, said he took portions from before him. And so as a result, it refers to food. And so now what we're saying is that if it's food, so then but now it becomes tamei, you can redeem it. So there are two situations where you can redeem. Either you can't just carry it all to Yerushalayim, or it means that you can't eat it in Yerushalayim because it's now tamei. So hakabamayskina bilakuach. It must be where we're talking about food that was purchased with Meiser Sheni money. So still the Gemara asks, as we turn to Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, Vilafirke, so let's purchase it, so let's redeem it. You know, you can still redeem that purchased food. To Tanan, as we have a Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Meiser Sheni, Parak Gimel, Mishnah Yud, to Halakuach, B'chesef Meiser Shenitma, Uyipadeh, that if you buy Meiser Sheni food with Meiser Sheni money, and it becomes Tamei, you can redeem it. So Rabbi Yehuda. So we say that that must be that we're like Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Yikaver, because he's the one who says that in that Mishnah he disagrees and says no, that food must be buried. Well, because basically you can redeem Meiser Sheni once, but once you have purchased new food with Meiser Sheni money, that can no longer be redeemed. Ihachi, my irya ir anidachas. Well, 1 second. if you're talking about food that was bought with Meiser Sheni money, and according to Rebbe Yehuda, then and it became Tameh, why in the world are you bothering with talking about Ira Nidachas? Afilu de Almanami. Any city in the world that was the source of that Meiser Sheni food would have to have that Meiser Sheni be buried, because the point is that's Rebbe Yehuda's position. It doesn't make a difference whether it's from an Irani Dachas or not. You can't just go ahead and do anything with it. You have to bury it. So as a result, we reverse the entire situation and we say, really, our Mishnah is dealing with Tar Meiser Sheni. The Mishnah that we cited at the beginning. So Ukagon Denafel. Our Mishnah that here in Masechet Tachelek, in Perek HaChelek, excuse me, Ukagon Denafel Machitzos. And so the situation is that it's Tahar Meiser Sheni, but the walls have fallen of Yerushalayim, Ukiderava, and it's like Rava said, to Amar Rava, Mechitza le'echol de'oraisa. The fact that you have to be inside Yerushalayim to eat Meiser Sheni, that is from the Torah. But liklot, the fact that once it comes in and it cannot come out of Yerushalayim, Rabbanan, that's rabbinic. V'chi gazer Rabbanan, and when the rabbis made this gzeira, ki asnehu l'mechitza, ki leisnehu l'mechitza lo. That they made the gezerah only when the walls of Jerusalem are still standing, but when the walls of Yerushalayim are no longer standing, so then the decree doesn't hold. And so as a result, if you brought the food in while the walls were standing, and then the Yerushalayim was destroyed, so technically you can take that Meiser Sheni food out and bring it back and have it destroyed with the rest of the city. And so what we're saying is, in that situation where you could have brought it back with the rest of the city, you're not going to do that because it was Meiser Sheni food. And so as a result, instead, you're going to bury it. You're going to just put it aside and hide it. And so as a result, it won't be able to be eaten, but it also won't get it also won't get destroyed with the normal method of destroying the food of an Ir Hanidacha. Okay. So, Kisvei HaKodesh Yiganzu. So we said that the holy scriptures from an Ir Hanidachat get hidden. So the Gemara notes that Rabbi Eliezer disagrees. Masnisin deloka Rabbi Eliezer, Titania Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Kol Ir sheyesh ba afilu mezuzah achat. If there's even one mezuzah in a city, einu nases Ir Hanidachas. It can't become an Ir Hanidachas. Shneamar v'sarata v'esh es ha'ir v'es kol shlala kalil. You have to burn everything completely. V'heika de'ika mezuzah lo efshar. But when you have a mezuzah, that's not possible. D'ksiv lo sasun kain la Hashem elokei. You shouldn't do this to Hashem, your God. Now, that's a pasuk in Dvarim Perek Yud Bet pasuk Dalet that's talking about that. Immediately before that, it says that we have to destroy all of the gods in the land of Israel when we come into the land, but we don't do that kind of destruction of our God. And so, as a result, when it comes to the name of Hashem, and we and again in that those pasuk, we have to say we obliterate the names of all of those gods. And so the idea is we obliterate the names of other gods that are not real gods, but to Hashem, our God, we will not destroy God's name. And so as a result, since you can't destroy the mezuzah, therefore, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you can't destroy the entire city. On the other hand, of course, the position in our Mishnah is that no, if just because you can't destroy the mezuzah, so fine, you don't destroy the mezuzah, you put it in Geniza, and that's the way our Mishnah, the Tana of our Mishnah, deals with a mezuzah in an Ir Hanidachas. All right, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So then the Gemara quotes the last part of our Mishnah, which references Rabbi Shimon's teaching. Now, Rabbi Shimon taught that, Rabbi Shimon taught that by burning the Ir Hanidachas, Hashem is treating it like the offering of an Ola sacrifice. So the Mishnah concluded, though, with a debate between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva regarding whether the destroyed city can be made into gardens and orchards. So now the Gemara asks about that debate. Lema b'de Rabbi Avin Amar Rabbi Ilah Kamiflagi. Maybe they're arguing about the statement by Rabbi Avin. To Amar Rabbi Avin Amar Rabbi Ilah. For Rabbi Avin said in the name of Rabbi Allah, Kol makom she'ata motzei klal ba'aseh uprat belotase, whenever you find a general rule in a positive commandment, followed by a specific rule in a negative commandment, aim done also beklal prat. We don't apply the general principle of klal prat to that situation. Now, what is the general principle of klal prat? It's the following: that if you have a generality followed by a specific, then we will say that the specific is the situation that we're talking about in the generality. And so specifically here, what does the Torah say? The Torah tells us two things. It tells us that you shall not, it says that the city that you destroy shall remain a heap. That is a heap. And so as a result, it's supposed to be burned. It's supposed to be destroyed. It seems like you shouldn't do anything to it. That implies a complete nothing that should happen to it. And then immediately thereafter, the Torah says that you shouldn't build. It has a negative commandment of low taseh, that you shouldn't build there. And so as a result, the fact that we have this, the fact that it should stay a heap, which is general, and then building, which is more specific, because building doesn't include planting. And so as a result, do we say klalu prat, and therefore we're going to say that the building also goes on the leave it as a heap? And when it says leave it as a heap, it means don't build. And so as a result, you could make a garden out of it. That was Rabbi Akiva's view. And whereas if you don't apply the limitation of the prat to the klal, and you say exactly like Rav Avin says in the name of Rabbi Yula, that aim done an oto b'klal prat, so then we would say, and that would be Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Demar Islay de Rabbi Avin, he holds of Rabbi Avin, and therefore he says that those two rules are separate. And therefore, if you were to even plant there, you would be violating the positive commandment of leaving it as a heap. And so as a result, maybe that's what we're saying. Umar Leisley to Rabbi Avin. And Rabbi Akiva would disagree with Rabbi Avin. Lo, not necessarily. Dekuli Ama Islihu Rabbi Avin. Really, everybody could agree with Rabbi Avin. And here's what they argue about. Mar Savar Od Legamri Mashma. That the word Od, right? It says, the pasuk says, don't have the pasuk handy. I'm sorry that I don't have the pasuk handy, where it says the word ode. But in that pasuk, it says that it shall never be built again. It shall never be built again. And no ode that it says there. And so the idea is that so the point is when it says ode, so legamri mashma. So as a result, they're really debating simply about the nature of the negative commandment. And when it says ode, it means that it should never be built again at all. Umar savar ode lekimasha haisa eina nivdes. That when it says ode, it means again, that it should never be built again. And so as a result, it should never be built as it was. But you're allowed to make it into gardens and orchards. Okay.
So I have a question about this.
Yes.
Jericho clearly existed in the time of the Nevi'im, because we have an incident there with Elisha. And there's
we're gonna get to Jericho right now.
Okay.
Okay. So Tanu Rabbanan, Hayuba Ilanos, Telushin Asurin Mechubarim Mutarin. If there are trees in the city, in the Ir Hanidachas, if they're disconnected, if they're not planted in the ground, so then they are considered property and they get destroyed. And if they're attached to the ground, well, then they are permitted. Shel ir acheret, for another city, bein solution, bein mechubarin asur. But for another city, it doesn't make a difference whether they're attached or connected. They are going to be prohibited. So my ir acheres, what is this ir acheres that's referenced here? Amarav Chisda Yericho. It refers to Yericho. Diksi v'haizaha ir cherem he v'kol asher ba lashem. That it is considered a cherem, it's a ruin, and we're not allowed, and nothing in it is permitted. It all goes to Hashem. So now that we reference Yericho, now the Gemara is going to talk about Yericho for the rest, most of the rest of the daf. Vayashba Yoshua ba'es ha'ilei more, quoting the pasuk, the psukim associated with this statement of saying that it should all be considered a booty for Hashem. So then, Arur ha'ish lifnei Hashem asher yakum uvana es ha'ir hazos es Yericho. So cursed is the person who builds the city Yericho. V'choro yasdena uv'tziiro yatziv dilaseha. That with the firstborn, the person who rebuilds it is going to lay its foundation, and with the youngest of that person, so then he will set up the gates. So Tanya, lo Yericho al shem ir acheres, that when it says it doesn't make a difference whether it's Yericho when that you build Yericho using another name in the right location, below ir acheres al shem Yericho, and you can't build another city using the name of Yericho. Diksi banachiel beis ha'eli es Yericho. So in fact, when Achav was king, so Chiel built a city of Yericho, and he ended up his house ended up being cursed. Ba'aviram b'choro yisda. Aviram, his eldest son, laid the foundation. Uvisguv tziro hitziv delasau, and Suguv, his youngest, he ended up setting up the gate. So both of them were killed. So Tanya, Ba'aviram Bechoro Rasha. 1 second. Why does it say specifically? So we have a brisa that says Ba'aviram Bechoro Rasha lo haya lo lilmod. That when it comes to Aviram, his firstborn, who is wicked, so Chiel couldn't be expected to have learned from him. But he should have learned from the death of his youngest son. So what exactly does that all mean? So Aviram usguv my avod. What did they do that we're now calling the youngest Aviram a Rasha? So they didn't do anything. So Hakikamar, this is what that brisa is trying to say. Va'aviram b'charo haya lilmo la'oso Rasha b'seguv tziro. That when it came to the death of Aviram, his firstborn, Chiel should have figured it out, that what was going to end up happening to his youngest son. And so as a result, he should have stopped building Yericho, and he would have been better off. Mimashma shenemar ba'aviram b'choro ena yodea shesguv tziro. 1 second. Once I know that Aviram was his oldest, don't I know that Suguv was younger than him? So Matam Lomar Skuv Tziro, what do I get from teaching us that he was his youngest son? Milamit Shahaya Mekaber V'holech Ma'aviram Ad Suguv. He had to bury all of his sons from his eldest to his youngest because he had violated the prohibition of building Yericho. And so the idea, but you're right that Yericho did exist, but it's the building of it that seems to be the problem, and not necessarily, going to the city if you, in its existing form.
Thank you. Answering my questions.
Great. Achav shushvnei hava. So Achav was Chiel's friend. And so what Asa Ihu ve'Eliyahu limishal b'shlama b'tamya. So when he was in mourning, so then Achav and Eli, when Chiel was in mourning for his sons, so Achav and Eliyahu came to visit him. Yosef Kamar. So Achav sat and said, Dilma Kimilat Yoshua, maybe because Yoshua had a curse on the person who built Yericho, Hachilat, that's what happened to you. Not a very good way to be Menachem Ovel, but in any event, Lo Yericho al Shem Ir Acheret, Velo Ir Acheret al Shem Yericho. After all, it says it doesn't make a difference whether you build Yericho by another name or you use another city with the name Yericho. Amrle Eliyahu in, and Eliyahu says, yeah, that's what exactly happened. That's why Chil was punished. So Amrle Achav says to Eliyahu, Hashta lavtusa demosha lo kamakaima dixi visartem va'abadtem. When it comes to the curses of Moshe, they were not fulfilled because it says in the second chapter of the Kriya Shema that you're going to turn away and worship other idols, other gods. Uksiv chara af Hashem b'chem v'atzar shemayim, that Hashem is going to get angry and is going to hold back the rain, hold back the heavens. So it doesn't rain. Vahu gabra okim le avodas kochavim. I'll call tell him. But listen to me. This guy, namely me, I've set up idols on every mound in the entire land of Israel. V'lo shavik le mitra demezel lemiskar le, and the rains keep coming. In fact, the rains come so much that people can't go and bow to the idols. Now, of course, he's missing that maybe that's the whole point, right, that Hashem wanted it to rain so much that people couldn't go to the bow of the idols. Okay. But Levasa Yoshua Talmidei Mikaima, now you're going to tell me that the curse of Yoshua has been fulfilled? So miyad, so now we explain this exchange helps us understand the pasuk. Vayomer Eliyahu Atishbi Mitoshavei Gilad Chai Hashem. This is a series of this is all from the Malachim Aleph Parak Yud Zayin Pasuk Aleph, but it's not all consecutive. There are some words missing. Chai Hashem Elokei Yisrael Im Yiyet Talumatar, that should there be dew or rain, that meaning that that Eliyahu prayed that the rain should stop. So boy rachmei. So then Eliyahu praised to Hashem. V'havule aklida demitra, and he was given the key for rain. V'kamva azel, and so then he left and he took away the rain. V'hidvar Hashem elavle more. So then eventually the Hashem says to Eliyahu, Lech mizeu fanisa lecha kedma v'nistarta benachal Kris. So go from here and go eastward to and hide by the brook of Kris. Va'ovim mivim lo lechem uvasar baboker, and the ravens would bring him meat every day, bread and meat every day. Mehecha, where would they bring it from? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav mibei tabache de Achav. It would come from Achav's kitchens. And so the next pasuk says that it was in the end of the year that the brook dried up and there was no rain in the land. So this is all again Parak Yud Zayin of Malachim Aleph. Kevan dechaza deikat sara ba'alma. When Hashem saw there was so much suffering, ksiv vayihi dvar Hashem elav lemor kum lech tzarfasa, go to Tzarfas. Uksiv vayihi achar hadvarim ha'elech chala ben Haisha ba'alas abayis, that it was at that time that the son of a woman who was the mistress of the house became ill. So Ba'arachme, Eliyahu prayed on her behalf. L'meitan le aklida de Tchias HaMesim. He wanted the key of Tchias HaMesim so that he could revive the son. So Amri le, so Hashem said, Shalosh maftachot lo nimsaru l'shaliach. You don't give 3 keys to an agent. Shel Chaya, the key of childbirth, Shel Gashamim, the key of rain, V'shel Tchias HaMesim, and the key of resurrection. And here Hashem had given 1 key, right? You have, if you have 3 keys that open something very dear, you don't put them all in the same basket. This is essentially a version of don't put all the eggs in the same basket. And so Hashem says, look, I gave you the key for rain. Now, Yomer Shtayim biyad Talmud v'achas biyad Rav. There should be 2 keys that you're holding, and I am only holding 1 key. That doesn't make any sense. So Asi Hash v'shakil hai. So here you can take the key for resurrection, but you got to give back the other key. And so as a result, because now Eliyahu gave back the key for rain, so now he was able to resurrect the child, and Hashem was able to send the rain. So Hashem says to Eliyahu, go and appear to Achav and say that I'm going to send rain. So Darash Hahu Glila Kamei de Rav Chisda. So a certain Galilean taught the following in front of Rav Chisda. Mashal de Eliyahu Lamad davar domeh. What is Eliyahu comparable to? Legavra detarke legale. He's a man who locked the gate. The abde lemifteche, and it's like he lost the key. Meaning that the idea is that he had this power over the rain, and he refused to unlock it at all while he was holding it, because in order to effectively fulfill the punishment that Moshe had said to the Jewish people in connection with worshiping other idols, that there would not be rain. So we conclude with Darish Rabbi Yossi B'Tzipori, Abba Eliyahu. One more story. This is Rabbi Yossi taught in Tzipori that Abba Eliyahu, our ancestor Eliyahu, Kapdan. He was Kapdan. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi, Haya Kapdan. Shekas al Achav. He was upset with Achav. V'amar Chai Hashem, and he said, a language of an oath. Im yeh hashanim ha'ela talumatar. If there should be rain in these years, and so as a result, he was, very sharp in his and very what's the word I'm looking for? He was easily offended and caused took action against those that offended him. So Hava Ragel Amesi Gabe. Now Eliyahu happened to be always regularly visiting Rabbi Yossi. And Ikasei Mine Tulasa Yome Velo Asa. And so after hearing Rabbi Yossi speak about him, that he was a kapdan, Eliyahu didn't come for 3 days. Kiyasa, when he came, Amrle, Rabbi Yossi said to him, Amai lo asamar, why didn't you come? Amrle, kaptan karisli, you called me a kaptan. So Amrle, Rabbi Yossi said back, Hadakaman kapidmar. Well, that shows that you're a kaptan. Meaning, if you're going to be, so specific, you have to be careful. In fact, one of my favorite teachings of Rabbi Weiss is the fact that every benching, we reference that Eliyahu, and we do so right before we make the Harachaman blessing our parents. And the reason is because when Eliyahu was training Elisha, and Elisha wanted to go back and say goodbye to his parents, but Eliyahu didn't let him. He said, you have to come now, etc. And that kind of attitude is not the attitude we want. We want Eliyahu to come back with an attitude that shows respect to the parents, that is not the kaptan of this Gemara. All right, so now the final piece of this Gemara, we're going to try and end off with a positive note. Lo yidbak b'yadcha me'uma min acher. You're not allowed to touch anything from the property of that city. Kolzman shirishayim ba'olam charon af ba'olam. As long as wicked people are in the world, Hashem's anger is in the world. So mine rishayim. Who are the wicked that we're talking about? So Amar of Yosef Ganve. It's thieves. So Tanarabanan, Rasha Bala Olam, Charon Bala Olam. When a wicked person comes into the world, so then anger comes into the world. Shneamar Bevo Rasha Ba Gam Buz V'im Kalon Cherpa. With the coming of the wicked person comes derision, and with shamefulness comes disgrace. Rasha Avad Min Olam. When a wicked person leaves the world, so Tova Bala Olam. Then good comes to the world. Shneamar Uva Avad Rishaim Rina. When the Rishaim, when the wicked are destroyed, so then Rina, there's joy. Tzadik niftar mina olam. When, on the other hand, when a righteous person departs from the world, so ra bal olam. So that's bad coming to the world. Shneamar hatzadik avad ve'ein ish sam alev. That when a righteous person is lost, so then people cannot pay attention. And when kindness people are gathered in, meaning that they die, Mevin, then there's no understanding. That it's because of evil that the righteous person is taken, meaning that the implication is that when the righteous leave, so then evil comes, wickedness comes. So and bad things come. Tzadik bala olam, and then we conclude with the fact that when righteous come to the world, so then Tova Baal Olam. So then good fortune comes to the world. Shneamar, Zeyinachamenu, Mamasenu, Mitzvon, Yadenu. That this is going to bring us relief. This is a reference to Noach. And of course, Noach was considered a tzaddik, ish tamim haya b'dorotav. And so as a result, this one's going to bring relief from our work and from the toil of our hands. And so, Hadron Allah, Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelek, Uslika la Masechah Sanhedrin. Hadron Allah, Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelek, Uslika la Masechah Sanhedrin. Hadron Allah, Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelek, Uslika la Masechet Sanhedrin. And so I wish you all a mazel tov on finishing Masechet Sanhedrin. It's exciting to imagine that we're going to now turn to Maseches Makot. With these words, we complete Maseches Sanhedrin. Stay tuned, God willing, tomorrow as we begin Maseches Makot. We're sorry that you're not here. We have not yet figured out a way for people to over Zoom also partake in the goodies that we have here in the room, but hopefully you'll take some time to enjoy and appreciate the tremendous accomplishment of finishing Masechet Sanhedrin and looking forward to continuing our learning, God willing, together tomorrow.
Hazaku Baruch.
Mazel tov. Thank you very much.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov.